Picture this. You're a young Indian student living in America, and you're strictly following this ancient practice of self-restraint. Well, one day you fall ill. You go to a Western doctor, and this doctor looks to you and says, your practice is actually against nature, that celibacy is physically harmful to your health. Now, this isn't a hypothetical. This is exactly what happened to a young man over a century ago. Confused, he actually went to the great spiritual leader, Swami Vivekananda, for advice. And Vivekananda's response? It was sharp and absolutely profound. He essentially asked, look, if humans are entirely enslaved to their basic physical instincts, what's the difference between us and animals? True power, he argued, doesn't come from indulgence. It comes from total mastery over ourselves. So welcome, everyone. In this explainer, we're going on a really fascinating journey. We're exploring the concept of Brahmacharya, a practice that gets misunderstood way too often as just simple celibacy. But as you'll see from ancient texts and, incredibly, cutting-edge 2025 clinical trials, it is actually a profound system for unlocking your ultimate human potential.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for the explainer today. 1. The secret of ultimate power. 2. Ancient wisdom versus modern science. 3. Physical and mental benefits. 4. The path of spiritual elevation. And finally, 5. Infallible remedies for practice.
All right, Section 1. The secret of ultimate power. Redefining celibacy for the modern mind.
You know, it is definitely time we shed some of our modern skepticism. We hear all the time that giving in to our impulses is just the most natural thing in the world, but Swami Vivekananda challenged that skeptical doctor's notion head-on. He pointed out that, sure, animals are entirely driven by their biology, but human beings, we possess a unique override switch, the capacity for conscious restraint. By conserving our vital energy instead of constantly spending it, we aren't going against nature at all. We're actually elevating ourselves to the absolute peak of human capability. It really sets the baseline for everything we're about to discuss today. We humans are uniquely built for focus and discipline.
To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at how the ancient Ayurvedic texts defined it. They categorized it under a concept called Triyostambha, which literally translates to the three main pillars of life. Think of your health like a stool resting on three legs. You've got ahara, which is your diet, nidra, which is your sleep, and brahmacharya, the disciplined practice of self-restraint. If any of those three pillars are weak, the whole structure of your health just collapses. So it's absolutely crucial to understand that in Ayurveda, brahmacharya isn't just some negative physical restriction. It's not just a list of things you shouldn't do. It is an active, vital preservation of your life force.
Moving right along to Section 2, Ancient Wisdom versus Modern Science. Let's validate the text.
Now you might be wondering, we've heard the philosophical arguments, but does this actually hold up to scientific scrutiny today? The answer is a massive, resounding yes. A 2025 systematic review published in the AUSDHARA journal analyzed 35 different clinical and experimental studies just to see what physically happens to the human body during brahmacharya. And this completely moves our conversation out of the ancient spiritual texts and right into the realm of modern clinical observation.
And this brilliantly illustrates the connection between the two. Thousands of years ago, the Charaka Samhita stated that brahmacharya conserves ojas, which is the body's ultimate vital essence and immunity. It strengthens agni, the digestive fire, and balances the bodily doshas. Now listen to the modern scientific translation of those exact same concepts. Studies from 2016 all the way to 2022 show that this practice reduces cortisol, that's our stress hormone. It lowers oxidative stress, and incredibly, it preserves mitochondrial integrity, which literally slows down cellular aging. The ancients called it ojas, modern scientists call it preserved mitochondrial integrity. It's the exact same physiological truth, just spoken in a different language. How amazing is that?
Which brings us to Section 3, Physical and Mental Benefits. Let's look at the clinical proof. Let's dig a little deeper into the specific measurable outcomes documented by these researchers. Mentally speaking, randomized controlled trials showed significant drops in anxiety and depression, and this is linked to a much better balance of neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. On the metabolic side, observational studies found practitioners had lower BMIs and improved glucose tolerance, which obviously lowers the risk of metabolic syndrome. And in terms of reproductive health, studies logged measurable improvements in both sperm motility for men and hormonal regularity for women. So the clinical consensus is staring us right in the face. Systematically conserving this energy optimizes human biology across the board.
All right, Section 4, the path of spiritual elevation, inner transformation.
While the clinical data is super impressive, we really can't ignore why this practice was originally developed in the first place, right? It was all about building immense psychological and spiritual resilience. Spiritual leaders refer to this conserved energy as pujgalsar. Now, think of your body kind of like a refinery that's turning crude oil into premium rocket fuel. Everything you eat and consume gets refined over and over until it produces its absolute ultimate, most potent physical essence. That is Pushkalsar. Preserving this rocket fuel is your ultimate safeguard against life's heaviest obstacles. If you're constantly depleting it, well, the mind gets weak, memory fades, and you just lose that internal fortitude.
When this essence is genuinely protected, the spiritual texts describe what we can basically call spiritual upgrades. The first one is the stopping of inner turmoil, or what they call total collision avoidance. Basically, when your internal energy isn't constantly scattered by physical impulses, you literally stop fighting with yourself. Secondary negative emotions, things like anger, massive greed, ego, and deceit, they just naturally begin to diminish. Because your energy is locked in, you develop this immense focus, incredibly sharp memory retention, and intellectual firmness. A true practitioner is described as an unmovable force of nature. They possess supreme emotional resilience, literally no matter what chaos is happening in the outside world.
Finally, Section 5, Infallible Remedies for Practice, the Actionable Guide. So, the crucial point is, how do we actually integrate this profound self-mastery into our chaotic, very modern lifestyles? Well, the sources provide a really clear chronological action plan. It's famously outlined by the spiritual master Premanand Maharaj as the 5 remedies to conquer internal diseases of the mind. Step 1 is satsang, actively seeking out the truth and surrounding yourself with good company because, hey, your environment shapes your thoughts. Step 2 is swajai, the structured reading of uplifting texts. Step 3 is actually fascinating, alpahar, which means a light diet. You know, we often think eating huge meals makes us strong, but Premanand points out the paradox here. Overeating just drains your energy into digestion and makes you lethargic, whereas a light diet actually gives you more vitality and mental sharpness. Step 4 is waking up early, between 3 and 4 a.m., totally avoiding those late-night hours where the mind loves to wander. And finally, Step 5 is practicing focused solitude and meditation.
Building on that, a beautifully practical text from 1940 called Akhand Jyoti distills this into everyday lifestyle habits. It's all about consuming a sattvic, pure, non-spicy diet so you don't overstimulate your nervous system. It recommends routine fasting a few days a month to just hit the reset button on your body, and getting outside for miles of walking every day to keep that energy moving. Psychologically, it suggests a really profound perspective shift, training your mind to view others as pure souls rather than physical bodies. That naturally cuts off objectification right at the root. And finally, it requires strictly avoiding explicit media and negative company. Ultimate self-mastery, it turns out, is built through highly actionable, everyday life hacking habits.
So, we've covered a ton of ground today, from ancient philosophical debates all the way to 2025 clinical trials. And the message from every single one of our sources is completely unified. Human energy is a finite, incredibly potent resource. When we scatter it, it leads to physical and mental depletion. But when it's conserved and properly channeled, it unlocks profound health, a razor-sharp intellect, and deep spiritual peace. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. Are you recklessly spending your vital energy on fleeting impulses, or are you actively investing it to become an unmovable force? Really think about it. Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.